Hey, everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am so blessed and honored to have this very special guest here today. We have Anindita Chowdhury, the founder and principal of the largest certified woman-owned business immigration law firm in the United States. Anindita, it's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always a privilege to talk to you and to talk about something both of us love and feel very passionate about, and that is, global mobility in general.
We are going to cover all the bases today. We're going to be talking about global mobility. We're going to be talking about what's going on in immigration. Things are going on all over the globe. And fortunately, your firm specializes in all those nooks and crannies and all the things happening. We've got, 64 elections going on this year that have happened and are going to happen. So there's impacts globally to policies and processes, things that people need to be aware of. It's incredible, as well as a U.S. election, which affects us all. So, and we're going to be talking about food too. So, hey, stay tuned for that. So get in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you are. Check in with us right now. I want to know your questions. I see Jay Hall, USILAW, checking in here in the comments. I see Jana Shazanaski checking in from Rio de Janeiro. So good to see y'all in there. Get in the comments, everybody. But I want to ask you, right now we have a presidential elections coming up. I want to just hop right into the thing that's on everybody's mind, because I talk to corporate folks all the time. I talk to our mobility service provider practitioners, and all they're talking about is the presidential election that's looming in the fall and what that impact is going to look like to our day-to-day. So what are you seeing right now? What should people be thinking about?
We're all kind of nervous. I think I share that feeling with a lot of people, hopefully just not our viewers to right this moment, but also the public at large, the citizens at large. But I would like to turn the attention to more so who will be elected, because that's not something we can control, right? I mean, that part of that equation, irrespective whether it is President Biden being reelected or President Trump being reelected or returned to this position. For us in this field, we don't have a choice, right? Just as much we can't control the outcome or the result, we have a responsibility, like I've repeatedly said, to take care of talent. And in that scenario, irrespective of who is in charge, I feel that every company, every petitioner, I would say in immigration terms in the US, but any employer is responsible for best practices for fiscal planning. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean by fiscal
planning? A lot of what are we in? Like June, right? We just are creeping into the middle of the year. But a lot of the planning for 2025 are being done by companies now. So whether it's budgets being presented, which will be in effect starting early 2025, all of this is being decided now. So what can any company of any size, whether it's small, large, mid-size, doesn't make a difference. I think what is important to remember, irrespective of getting nervous of what the outcome of the election is and then what will come in 2025, is to plan on how to be smart now and protect the companies and the talent and design different, I would say, policies that would then lead the HR team, the immigration team, the global mobility team, the partners, if they have law firms, to work collectively as a group to then design different things that would protect the company in 2025, irrespective who's in charge.
I want to dig into that. I want to click into that. I want to say what's up to some of the people that are tuning in here. Get in the comments. I want to hear what questions you have about immigration in your country, in the U.S. What questions are on your mind? If you're a corporate practitioner or if you're a service provider, I want to know what your thoughts are on it. We've got people checking in from London. We got Richard Majewski checking in. Put your questions in here. Richard, Tom Brune checking in. Looking forward to Anindita's insights. Love Tom. We got Jason Hall checking in here as well. Look, Connecticut's in the house. Sarah Flores here, ready to learn more about the immigration. Sarah, what questions do you have? I want to know. Put them in here. Joining from Capitol Hill. Look at Non Park, one of your USILAW people. What's he doing on Capitol Hill right now?
He's lobbying. I mean, to promote, I guess, a lot of what we're going to talk about, but just irrespective to, how to work together to protect and have a secure future.
I love it. I love it. And I saw him do a post earlier. It looks like there's like kind of a GBTA thing going on up there as well.
Yes.
Richard Majewski saying U.S. elections, but also coming up in the UK,
Absolutely.
July 4, and in France. What are you?
Those are one of the 64 that you had referred to. Yeah.
I want to always respond to the folks that are watching first. Put your comments in there, hit that like button. But what are you thinking about some of the UK and French elections that are happening? Is that going to be
what is concerning? I mean, the French, as we know, just dissolved, the government just because, in the hope, I guess the interpretation was that, the future looked a little bleak. So Macron pivoted and just dissolved the government in the hope of getting an election in place.
That sounds like a big deal. Is that a big deal?
It is a huge deal. It is a huge deal. But I guess as long as it's within legal parameters, and he can do it. And he hopes that, this would be something that will benefit his party and himself. So time will tell. But yeah, I mean, in general, we've seen in Europe specifically, and pockets of Europe and around the world, I would say, there is a tend to the far right. I mean, that's just the way the trend is going.
Yeah.
But irrespective, like to bring it back to what you and I were talking about, no matter what happens in France, no matter what happens in the UK, no matter what happens in the US, I mean, India just finished its elections and re-elected Prime Minister Modi, with a not so evident, not that landslide that he was expecting, but definitely, he's been re-elected with a coalition government, which, well, we'll see what happens as far as the test of time is concerned. But nevertheless, what we are responsible for, and we collectively as a group, I must say, is how do we plan better, whether it's fiscal planning, whether it's, policy planning, in the midst of this election volatility, what are, and we can go into it, the different scenarios that every company should be planning. And given the circumstances, there has to be multiple scenarios.
So what are those scenarios here? Let's double click into that idea. Let's play this thought exercise here as if we were kind of the corporate mobility and immigration practitioners at these companies looking to mitigate risk and have a plan for the future. What are those scenarios that they should be addressing?
I think first and foremost, they need to get with the business teams to find out what are the talent pool, the needs for the talent pool. It is without doubt and without debate that there is a dearth of talent around the world. I mean, the US has its lowest unemployment rate. You can imagine how we've been doing, this as a trend. But at the same time, we've noticed, with maybe just the IT sector, we've talked about this, Ben, you and I, before, the IT sector definitely took a beating last year as far as layoffs are concerned coming out of COVID.
Yeah. Sure.
There is no doubt in anybody's mind, whether it is healthcare, whether it is nurses, whether it's agriculture, whether it's farmers, whether it is career, qualified engineers in the IT field, there is definitely a huge dearth of any of these kinds of professionals. I can definitely speak for the US economy. I would like to extend that to the global economy, that, pilots, I mean, that's another dearth, of all these pockets of professions that we have a shortage for. So, per company, the first and foremost thing that, we should look into, or we advise normally, we partner with our different employers that we are privileged to represent and strategize. And then sometimes even we bring collaboratively people to the table. And we've been a part of that, you and me and the extended team at USILAW, Land Park specifically, and a couple of other corporates of, how are other corporates similarly sized, similarly in the same vertical, how is everybody doing it? To actually work together rather than work against each other and deal with this issue, because across the board, everybody's having the same issue of a dearth of talent.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this, and I'd love to know, what are the scenarios out there that you are thinking about going into the second half of 2024 with some big elections looming? What are the things on your mind that you're searching for strategies for? If you're watching this, get in the comments, hit that like button. I want to know who you are. Check in there. We've got people with comments here, and I want to take some of these comments and and kind of ask you, okay, Anindita, let's see what's going on. And Anindita reference, by the way, I should make note of the mobility and immigration symposiums that have been taking place that GLOMO has been co-hosting with USILAW there in at the Henry Jackson Foundation. It's been phenomenal. Great facility. I highly recommend anyone in the DC area, even if you're not in the DC area, to make it down there for those. I think we have the next one coming up. It hasn't been announced the date yet, but I think it's in August, and we've brought phenomenal players to the table from obviously from USILAW, but also from government NGOs, also from some of the largest companies in the US. Can't say who, because what happens in the room stays in the room, right? It's our little immigration Vegas there, right? But I highly recommend you attend those. We got a couple comments coming in here. I want to just read a couple of these and have you respond to some of them, okay? Tom Brune says, the word on the street is that the flash election in the UK will not have much impact to the UK immigration point system. Do you agree, both short-term and long-term?
I mean, I think in the short term, Tom, my opinion would be that, it would not make a difference. But if this government can stand the test of time, it has, to be very open about it, has taken some stance, which, that's the almost 50% increase in prevailing wages and stuff like that. The position it has taken is not pro-immigrant, so would that be something? It was definitely going to hurt the economy. Anybody that's visited London or even the UK in general, but I'm saying London because that's where I kind of transit through, can firsthand experience how with Brexit, the talent pool of the neighboring East European countries that were there to help, even service, even like in a restaurant, has gone down so badly. And that's a direct effect of immigration.
Yeah, totally. And you bring up a really great point that I've learned at the immigration symposium, that while the point system may be relatively unchanged, when you raise that prevailing wage, you exclude so many people who would have been eligible. And I think, did you say 50% increase in prevailing wage?
46 to 50, yeah, 48 to 50. I forget the exact number.
Massive.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a whole class of people.
Literally, you're like almost having to force somebody to, and there's no justification for it. It's not like, the new requirements are people who now have a PhD, so there's no logic to that increase, but it is what it is. It's
using salary, to your point, is such an arbitrary indicator, because it's not based on what's needed by industry, by what the shortage is in a given industry, by someone's qualifications. I mean, it's just the pay and frankly, what's more pay than just writing somebody an offer letter that says 150,000 pounds instead of 100,000 pounds. I mean, it's very arbitrary. Do you see companies coming up with creative solutions to combat that prevailing wage thing?
That's exactly like you were saying, that that's what we are trying to do with our partners, to then come up with a collaborative idea. So in that scenario, how do you handle it? I mean, hypothetically, if tomorrow that would be something that the US would do, because there was a time actually in 2021, if I recall correctly, in October, where there was an executive order issued by President Trump who said that all salaries have to be level 3. So somebody who was making 68 or 70 had to be paid 150, with no logic. So there was a halt to processing amendments, extensions, for almost 6 weeks. And then there was a way to, avert that, and then business continued. But yes, prevailing wages, as you're saying, or salaries, as you're saying, is a huge factor to, retaining talent and increasing or, adding to the talent.
Well, I'm really curious about this one scenario, because the UK is such a big market with this prevailing wage thing. What would stop me as an employer from amending offer letters instead of 100,000 to say 146,000 pounds? Let's just say that's the threshold, right? And extending that to someone and then adjusting their salary at a later date. Do they go back and check and validate salary throughout?
I'm very sure compliance is always something that we are very big on.
Yeah.
This compliance across the board has been very important. So we always are super, super, super careful to advise any of our employers that, anything you're signing to on a form, on a document, supporting document, what we call, that will be a part of the petition, be very careful to honor it effective the approval of the petition,
Yeah.
or whatever the time frame is. No, because if you're found non-compliant, then that would not only reflect very poorly on the company, and definitely would lose to, like, sometimes I'll tell you, even in our language, in our genre of US immigration, H-1Bs. Okay, so if supposing somebody moves from Oklahoma to maybe Idaho, or Idaho to Florida, you have to file an amendment. And there are times that the USCIS has come back and issued what we call an NOIR or NOID, a notice of intent to revoke or an intent to deny, even
Oh,
in an
wow.
approved petition, to then go back and say, hey, was this person in the right place? And was he or she being paid the right salary and doing the right duties? And then you go back to the history and document it. And we've had, honest to goodness, 100% success rate in everything that's questioned, because we are lucky that our group of partners or employers are very compliant. If you're not, then the Immigration Service has every right to deny the petition. The foreign national is rendered illegal and then has to leave the country.
This is really great information. I want to make sure we get to all of these comments because there's a lot of comments coming in. Keep these comments and these questions coming in. I want to know, what are you thinking about? And I want to have Anindita Chowdhury respond to that. Put your immigration comments and questions and thoughts in here. We've got some wild, crazy questions in here and comments. So I'm gonna, this is a perfect forum for that stuff here. So Sarah says, how will elections, US, France, and UK, kind of a general question, general mobility, how will they affect mobility in 2025 to US companies?
I personally am of the opinion that it should not, because mobility to the US is controlled by US immigration. And that is what we had started off this discussion by saying, that, what we need to do very intelligently is, irrespective of who the president is, have these conversations, these planning and designing the best practices, conversations within the company. So I really don't think, if it is, irrespective of the outcome of France and UK, there is no doubt that currently the US is still heralded and respected to be the land of opportunity, to be the land that there's still an ability that, if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to give it like the 110%, and I'm speaking like an immigrant, I identify with all of those values when I came here almost 34 years ago. And US is still the one country that still needs this talent. I mean, everybody else does, but I think the US has a very well-structured system, which, if you can meet all the criteria, you will still have a positive outcome.
And I just want to take a moment and just say, I love that about you. I love that about Nafis. I love that about, many of the people at your firm, is that you've stood on that line and you know what it means to immigrate to this country. You know what it means to pursue opportunity. You know what it means to feel that opportunity might be snatched away from you if you're not compliant for some reason, or found to be lacking in your paperwork or whatever. And you approach, and every time I interact with you and your firm, I'm struck by the fact that you approach the work with that duty of care in mind every single time, to say, if I was the person who this petition is for, how would I represent it? And I love that about you.
No, thank you. Thank you for reflecting what is such a fundamental value at USILAW so beautifully and so truthfully, because, I mean, our director Nafis always says that, he can be assured that if his case was given to anybody, whether it's a legal assistant, whether it's a paralegal, whether it is a team lead, whether it is, the associate director, whoever it is, that this firm would prepare probably the best petition anybody can in the US. And that's some of the values we do inculcate on a daily basis. When we produce thousands of petitions, tens of thousands of petitions on an annual basis, but each petition matters, because, I mean, some of you might be fed up of hearing me say this repeatedly, but we genuinely believe that, I personally, as a professional, believe that behind every petition is a human being. And you know what? It could have been your grandfather. It could have been your uncle. It could have been your father. It could have been, America is the perfect melting pot. It is the land of the immigrant, right? Other than the Native Americans, nobody is native to this country. So where did you come from? And when did you come? And when you did, who was that trail, whether it's a grandparent, whether it is a great grandparent, whether it's a father, whether it's a mother, whether it's an aunt that brought the family over. It could have been your petition.
And
And
who
what if
took the
somebody,
duty? And who took the duty to care for your ancestors when they came over here?
and if the duty is not taken, would you have been here?
Right. Wow.
If that petition was denied or some wrong information was inputted and you could not come here, what would your family tree look like? I mean, yes, we are not doctors, and surgeons and all have such a fundamental responsibility because you're operating on us, no matter what the specialty is. But I feel that this trade of the immigration field, be it whether you're working with professionals in corporations or you're dealing with people who are struggling to become legal, irrespective what your responsibilities may be, we change lives, we change family trees, so
Generational
generational.
changes.
Sorry,
Many
thank you.
generations. Yes.
Exactly.
We've got excellent comments coming in. Keep these comments and questions coming in. Hit that like button. I want to, we got this, we've got an interesting comment here. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. Ron Paul Reddy says, given that most of the countries are preferring to elect right-wing leaders, how can anybody influence those leaders to focus more on legal immigration to contribute to the destination country, steering their focus away from illegal immigration, refugees, asylees, lottery type of immigration, etc.? Yes, we hear this narrative quite a bit, right? Where immigration is all focused on, the border and what's happening, and it's stigmatized and it's demonized. But it's just one facet of the issue.
Absolutely. And alternatively, what makes this country tick? I'm talking about the US specifically, but I can extend it globally. But I would like to start with focusing on the US. How many CEOs do we have of this country? Of any amount of top 500 companies that are immigrants like me, not even like first generation, and that is the conversation that Mr. Reddy is referring to, that focus on legal immigration. What are the definite contributions and value that legal immigration brings to this country or any country? And how would this country survive? And any country, whether you say the UK, France, X, Y, Z, how would that country survive without that contribution and without that benefit?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what, when we look at the most valuable companies in the world, the amount that were founded by immigrants and first generation immigrants, I mean, Elon Musk, the founders of Google, right? I mean, if these companies were founded in Sweden or India versus being founded in the United States, I mean, think about the balance of power and economics that would have changed, right? I mean, talk about generational change within a family, generational change within countries and economies.
Absolutely. I mean, there is Elon Musk. There is, of course, the Steve Jobs. Don't forget him. Where was he? Just
first generation, right?
Syrian boy who was given up for adoption.
Oh, was he an immigrant himself?
Yeah. I mean, parents, but then
first
giving up
generation.
for adoption. Yeah.
Okay.
And, anybody, Sergey, you name
Sergey
it,
Brin,
Brin, anybody. But then the next level also, how many CEOs are, in this case, happens to be with the commonality of Indian origin? They're all immigrants. And what if they were constricted from entering? What would happen to these companies?
We've got some, keep checking in, get in the comments here. I want to know what your thoughts are. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about the elections that are happening. We're talking about the scenarios and the things that we're thinking about as we go into the second half of 2024. And what strategies are we employing? We've got some great comments coming in. I'm always going to try to prioritize those comments here. Richard says, talking family trees. My German wife is constantly criticizing the UK thanks to Ancestry DNA. It turns out she's more of a Brit than me. Who knows who we all are? Yeah, fair point when we look to stigmatize others, right? Richard's got a question. Before we get to that, Ritu, love it. Ritu is great. The symposiums are a great platform. Yes, Ritu's been to both of our first symposiums, and she says the symposiums
contributed.
She's been on the panel. She's a phenomenal speaker, and she's helping us design future ones as well. So thank you, Ritu, for your contribution. She says the symposiums are a great platform to exchange ideas and brainstorm and are very well organized and attended. Thank you for those. Education to corporate leadership is a common area of opportunity. Thank you, Ritu. I would like to know, Ritu, what is some of the topics that you would like to see discussed at future symposium? Maybe you could tease that for us a little bit. Rampal has a question for us, and I want to ask it here. Some phenomenal questions coming from Rampal. Since it could take 50 to 100 years to get a green card for employment-based EB3 or even EB2 category for people born in some countries like China and India, what is USILAW thinking of doing, if anything? What are the better options or strategies?
I respectfully would like to correct your 50 to 100 years. I know it's in jest, but it feels like that. I can totally
What
get
is
that
the current
also.
weight? Like, what? Give us an idea of maybe the current.
Well,
When I
the
heard it,
EB2,
it was crazy.
EB3s, yeah, at 2012, I mean, EB1 just jumped for July by 11 months. So that was a welcome break for some of us. But it is quite disturbing. And I know for a fact this has been such an issue that, the Indian diaspora, and I'm speaking first for India, and then I'll get into China because China is in a much better state than India is, where right now, EB2, EB3, which is basically three different categories. There's EB is employment based. So there's first preference, second preference, third preference, depending on what your position requires as far as requirements, educational requirements, years of experience. And that has to match up with the foreign national who actually must prove that he or she already obtained that. So immigration 101, but let's defer for that. So essentially right now, for India is 2012. Now, but 2012, on the face of it, just like, oh, what's the big deal? It's not 50 years. It's just pretty much, 10 plus 2 or whatever. It's not that because it doesn't move per month or per day. So next month, when, the August bulletin comes up, it's not like it'll move. It could move in 6 months, like the EB1 category jumps 11 months. So how is it calculated? Let's take a few moments to even discuss that. It is pretty much, there's an allotted quota per country. And the Department of State, it's not even the USCIS, not even the Department of Homeland Security, even who's aware. It's the Department of State which controls or supervises all the consulates, who then does a quick recce of exactly how many numbers of immigrant visas are used up by nationals of that country. And then these dates are released. And if there is any availability or if there's any spots, then the dates move. If there is an oversubscription, which clearly is the case with India, because there are so many Indian engineers, Indian professionals, Indian non-immigrant people who've come here on a non-immigrant visa, that's what's causing the backlog. And I know this has been a big issue for almost the last decade and a half to get rid of the per country limitations or to extend to India the unused numbers for the rest of the world. So essentially, there are 5 categories, and then there's the rest of the world. So there's one for India, there's one for China, there's one for Philippines, there's one for Mexico. In certain categories, there's one for Central America, and then the rest of the world. So that should tell you how many nationals or ethnic origins, from these particular countries come to the US.
Well, and I remember seeing at one of the immigration symposiums that you hosted, Non-Park put up some statistics, which I thought were very interesting when we talk about the percentage of folks that are here. And I think it was 74% were from India. And if I recall correctly, it was 12% from China, thereabouts. And every other country was 0.9% or less, to show what an overwhelming majority, Indian nationals are here. And, do you think that that's problematic, or one of the challenges that we face from a policy standpoint is, do you think that the lack of diversity in immigration causes a challenge from a U.S. policy standpoint?
See, one could criticize the US saying with oversubscription of Indians. I will compare it to the Singapore system, where the COMPASS system there has a per country limitation. But then to get around that also, they do EORs and basically, find, subcontractors is the easiest way to describe it, to get over the talent need. Because irrespective, doesn't make a difference. There is a dearth of talent no matter which country you're looking at.
Right.
Now, in addition, and this might sound a little self-serving because of the nationality and the ethnicity I have, which is obviously originally from India. But there is some value to the Indian education system, which produces these engineers.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're fluent in English for the most part, and the fact that they're very driven. I don't know what the characteristics are, but I don't want to just
But I think you make a great point. The fact of the matter is we have a skills gap and we have a country with a skills surplus, for lack of a better word, right? And so that's where we're farming the talent from. And you see it to lesser extents in other maybe Asian countries. I mean, you see it to some extent, in Vietnam, or to some extent from the Philippines and things of that nature. But I mean, India is just such a large country with so much human capital. And to all the points you said, I mean, they speak English, and they have these amazing computer skills, which has been just something we've never caught up with here in the U.S., even with our focus on STEM and STEAM in our education system. U.S. kids just aren't pursuing those trades at the same level and pace to keep up with the technology growth that we have here, because we have so many great companies here. And to go to Nafis's well-timed comment here, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Apple, top 3 American companies that have foreign-born CEOs. So we have this blessing of these amazing companies that are here on our shores, but we just do not have the talent. And I think it's an interesting thing when we look at immigration policy has been to let in these highly skilled people who will one day be the CEO of a Microsoft, but we have not also let in commensurate amounts of people who can do the actual work. And that is still where there's a shortage, it feels like.
Absolutely. You summarize it beautifully. I mean, I say this partially in jest, but primarily in seriousness. For those of us in the trade, if an American company could find a US citizen to do the job, nobody would go through the headache and the cost that's required.
Relocation. It's not fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If there was no other alternative, trust me, nobody would go through this headache. It's a responsibility. No.
Well, and this narrative that somehow, companies are able to pay immigrants less. I mean, the prevailing wages, require.
Sorry.
It just doesn't. It's not true.
No.
It might be true for people if someone's working off the book, so to speak, but it's not. That's not the case in any of these kinds of professional.
Absolutely. I mean, prevailing wages are prevailing wages. I'm just saying, you're required to be law abiding. And, let me be very clear that the rules in the US are very, very, very clear about and it's down to per county. So it's not even like one big town or one big state and generalized, wages. It's per county, and depending on the position, depending on the responsibilities, depending on the years of experience and that are required, education combined, et cetera, all said and done, it is a very minute math that is, compounded and then published. And every company must adhere to it. If you're signing, putting your signature, like we had started, referencing a few minutes ago, you better comply.
I've got a couple questions and comments. Keep these questions and comments coming in. Hit that like button. Let everybody know we're here with Anindita Chowdhury, founder and principal of USILAW. We've got a comment here from Ram Paul, and we got Ritu as well on deck here. Ram Paul says, why is it taking so much time and effort for the U.S. government leaders to understand that it is unfair to fix a 7% quota for every country, no matter how big or small it is? Why are the relevant lobbyists not pushing hard enough to change the laws? Out of 140K GCs, India and China are allocated only about 10K GCs, which is 7% of 140K. Is that factually correct first?
No, there is absolutely an allocation issue. And that's what I was referencing. I will tell you, this was a big issue because there was an expectation that, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump were presumably very close. And, that was definitely on the table where we would remove the per country limitations or allocate to India the ones that were unused by the rest of the world rather than go back to the pool for the rest of the world. Guess what? Nothing came of it. We're still in the same rut. And I agree with what Ron Paul is saying that, but I know for a fact there's been a huge amount of lobbying, millions of dollars invested in it. But I am a little aghast to why the needle has not moved one bit. So, that is frustrating. And in all fairness to the professions, because, that leads us to another sector. It's like, what do we do to work with our partners, to work with the employers, of being creative, of rather getting stuck in this rut of 2012? Are there other visas? Are there other avenues that you can explore? And there are. I mean, when we partner with some of our employers, we will look into EB1 options. If the person qualifies, EB1A is the category that is for extraordinary abilities, but it's not like the dime a dozen people who qualify. That's the other truth of the matter. There are EB1Bs. That's another option. There's NIWs if you're doing some national interest work. So there are avenues, but it's not like there are 50 different other avenues that'll get this person off this 2012 train and will bring him or her into a category that'll give him a visa or a green card, or her a visa in 3 years. That's the truth. So
really interesting stuff here. Speaking of other types of visas, Nafisa is also, let's not forget the other visa types that are used, like the H-2B, the J-1s, where there aren't a lot of Indian who are coming in, but people from countries such as the Philippines and other South American countries that have larger representation in those categories. I am curious, though, if only 10K, just personal curiosity, if only 7% of the GCs, the green cards, are reserved for Indian and 10% for, or 7% for China. What is the pathway that's accounting for 74% of folks who are here being from India?
What the rule has been amended to protect them is, each non-immigrant visa. So you have to maintain a non-immigrant visa while you're physically in the US, maybe pursuing your green card. So just by applying for a green card doesn't give you an automatic valid status to remain in the US.
Yeah.
So the non-immigrant visas, which are the 74% that you're referencing, Ben, is the H-1B. So the H-1B is only for 6 years. However, the way around that, which of course Congress realized, and this was the AC-21, the American Competitiveness Act, that came out, in the 20th century to 2000, which basically gives us some avenues of extending that H for 6 years, if you have, to keep it very simple, 2 steps of the green card taken care of. So if you have a perm approved, if you have an I-140 approved, there are 2 sections, section 106 and 104, that you could use to extend the 6th into a 7th year, or the 6th into a 9th year. I don't want to go into too much into the weeds, but yes. So therefore, because if it was a hard 6 years, and the math is taking 2012, current processing, the person would have to go back home, to wherever they came from. And that would be such a waste of talent, because here are people embedded in different companies providing such valuable services that the US needs, and then to have to be turned away, which still happens, mind you, because this was extended only for the H-1Bs, not for the Ls. L is another huge pool, not as much as the H, but definitely a significant pool of work visas for multinational transferees. So when a company has different branches and has a branch from the parent company, which could be in the US, and has a branch in the country that the person is immigrating from, those are L1 visas. There are some requirements that you must be employed abroad for at least 1 year. There are different categories. One is a manager, one is specialized tool expertise, et cetera, et cetera. So those professionals, if they're not going to get their green cards, if the company has a policy where they will wait for 3 years to initiate a green card, then you've lost out. And L1A is 7 years, L1B is 5 years. So guess what? So if the company has a policy of waiting for 3 years, whatever it is 7 minus 3. So you have only 4 years. 5 minus 3, you have 2 years. So in a situation like that, a lot of Ls had to return back home. The Hs must have those 2 steps of the green card completed. Not everybody is that fortunate to have an employer that sponsors them. So then again, the person has to go back home, and the talent is wasted, or work is disrupted.
Yeah. Wow. It's such a complex issue with so many different visa types, so many different rules and regulations, and yet we boil it down and reduce it to some simple narrative about border security or some ridiculous narrative like that. To Tom's point in the comments there, keep these comments coming. Hit that like button. I want you to all check in here and get in the conversation. Ritu says, likewise, there's also a large skills gap in manufacturing. This is something a lot of times we don't want to talk about, but it's there. A study conducted by Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute predicts that 2.1 million manufacturing positions will go unfulfilled by 2030. These empty positions could cost the US a loss of about $1 trillion in GDP. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely bullseye. And this is what will cost us. If something cannot be done, we will not be the market leader for too long, because that's the other challenge, right? Because when situations in the US get a little stringent or get, stuck, where do people go? They go either north to Canada, south to Mexico. I mean,
Yep.
manufacturing, talk about manufacturing. This relationship between Mexico, China, India has just blown up in the last 12 months. And we should have been also a beneficiary of that, the US. And we're not being able to tap into that. And we're losing talent.
Well, I think it's really interesting if you see kind of this nearshoring of manufacturing to Mexico has been huge. I think it was earlier this year, I think it may have been February, where exports from Mexico eclipsed exports from China, which is just insane to think about. It hadn't happened for 10 or 12 years prior to that. But do you think that that's a long-term shift? Are you hearing from your clients that that's a longer-term shift in strategy to bring the manufacturing closer? And what drives that in your opinion?
I mean, it is a fact that just in the last 2 to 3 years, we have had to advise, counsel, assist with definitely Canadian immigration, Mexican immigration. It has grown. And when, for example, a person running out of time, like in an L, like I gave you an example, or even in an H, it is very easy to transfer that talent to a Mexico or a Canada in the same time zone. Because time zone is another big thing, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's
if you
big.
ship them to Asia, it's going to be an entirely, we affectionately call it the graveyard shift, which is the US time zone in India. But to maintain and still serve the clients of our companies, right? At the end of the day, the mainstream American companies who need the services rendered by these foreign nationals, if you keep them within the same time zone, that's another way to solve the problem and still have them out of the US.
Yeah.
And then try to reset the clock. Some immigration visas, you can reset the clock by sending the professional abroad for more than a year and then bring them back. So that's another alternative.
I suspect that the supply chain issues of 2020, 2021, with so much congestion at the port of Long Beach and the container shipping imbalance between China, really showed that supply chains are vulnerable. They are a potentially existential threat to business. The fact that we have so much manufacturing so far away, you could even construe it possibly as a national security risk. But I also think that the IP, I'm going to say, I can do this. It's my show. I can say it. China's notorious for appropriating the intellectual property of U.S.-based manufacturers anywhere, right? And so if I'm building my cars over there, and all of a sudden all my best, innovative technology is being co-opted and put into their, state-owned car manufacturers, I got to think at some point I'm really letting the wolf in the hen house, so to speak, by putting my manufacturing over there. And compared to the relatively strong relationship we have with our allies to the south, Mexico, and the fact that now we can just truck this across the border and transborder operations, which that capability is growing rapidly. I've talked to presidents at logistics firms, because that's we do this, and they're building more and more cross-dock operations in Laredo, in El Paso, and all along the border that specialize in bringing product across the border from Mexico. I just love this development that I'm seeing with Mexican manufacturing, and I'm wondering, are you seeing Mexico as a new hot destination for global mobility programs?
100%. 100%. Like I told you, there's been so much. Canada has always been the alternative. Now Mexico's just blown up in the last, I would say, immediate 12 months.
Is it almost like Canada for services and Mexico for manufacturing?
Possibly. Because I guess there's also the cost incurred, right? Mexico is a lot cheaper to do business than it is in the US, which is prohibitively expensive. And then also Canada as a comparison. Absolutely.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Get in the comments. I want to hear from you all. Hit that like button. But I also want to have a little fun, because this isn't always have to be so serious, right? I mean, we're fun people, you know. We enjoy. Everyone knows if you watch the show for any period of time, they know that I enjoy a good meal, Anindita, and I've had some very good meals with you. You've been gracious enough to have me in your home where I've enjoyed some fantastic meals. So I want to talk for a second. Can we just take a break from all the serious talk and talk a little bit about food? Okay.
Absolutely.
Something almost as vital as immigration. Okay.
Absolutely.
Um, Adam, can you give us a top five real quick? Let's have some fun, everybody. Get in the comments. I want to know what you think. What are your top five favorite cuisines? Put your favorite cuisine in the comments right now. If you're watching this right now, I want to know your favorite cuisine. If you had to eat one type of food, now, I'm not saying like barbecue brisket sandwich. It doesn't have to be one dish, but like a genre of food. Okay. Put that in the comments. If you had to eat one genre, one country's cuisine for the rest of your life, what would it be? Put it in the comments. And I'm going to ask Anindita her top five. So let's start with number five. Adam, if you could bring that up for us, I'd appreciate it. Number five, Thai food, Anindita. Is that right?
As you count up.
I
Yes.
do. We
Yes.
go backwards. We want the suspense to build.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
the showmanship here. What
Sure.
are your thoughts on Thai food? I love Thai food. Why do you
I
like
mean, it's a good blend of, the East, two cultures in the East. Thai food has a distinct Chinese influence, obviously,
Mhm.
and definitely some Indian influences also. So it's a good blend.
I love the fact you brought that up because the fact curries are very prominent in Thai food. And I read
Yes.
something once. So I don't know if you know this, Anindita, about me. Okay. You know a lot about me, but did you know that I used to work in a Thai restaurant?
Oh, seriously? No, I had
Yes.
no clue.
So I, I, um, so I'm gonna tell a quick story. I used to go to Oklahoma every summer to visit my father, right? Because my parents split and he was in Oklahoma. So I go visit him, and it was hot as all get. It was 100 degrees every day. It was miserable. But I made friends with this Laotian family 2 doors down, right? I played basketball with them, whatever. And they owned a Thai restaurant, Thai, Laotian, Cambodian restaurant, right? It's called Titapon. I still remember it. It was over by the mall. And I got so bored during the day. I was like, can I come work with you guys at work? So, because, it's immigrant families, so they make everybody come work in the restaurant.
Absolutely.
And they treated me like one of their own, which meant they did not pay me. They said, listen, big boy, you can come work here. Okay. I probably was 13 years old, 14 years old. They did not pay me. They said, but you can keep all your tips and you can eat all the food when the lunch buffet is over. I said, sold, done. And
You got free lunch.
I did.
Well, you
Yeah,
did work. So
I did. I worked in a Thai restaurant for a summer there. And so I love Thai food. I really, really love it. I think it's an excellent show. What's your favorite Thai dish?
I think I would say the red curry. Or is it toss, masaman curry or red curry? But yeah,
I love a nice masam and curry too
yeah,
with the
the
potatoes, the
coconut.
meat and
Yeah,
potatoes. It's very.
exactly.
Oh, it's great. Have you ever had the papaya salad?
Yes. But I'm partial to the green mango.
Yes, that
Or
papaya.
I know certain members of my family like the tea salad also, the tea leaf salad.
Yes,
But I think that's a little bitter for my taste, but I love the green mango. And it's a challenge to recreate it. I have to do that this summer just to,
it's
fix it.
very
Now
hard.
now you can get like mangoes, good mangoes, green and ripe, but yes.
Yes, get in the comments. We're talking about our favorite cuisines. We're doing Anindita's top five. Five was Thai. What is number four, Anindita?
Number four would be Japanese.
Yes, I like it. Why is Japanese number four for you?
I would say with an asterisk or a disclaimer, Japanese food in Japan. I am not somebody who has the guts to eat sashimi and like all kinds of fish, raw fish. But I must tell you that every time I've had the privilege of visiting Japan and eating fish there, I mean, my issue is sometimes if my fish smells, it's not something I can handle. If they're bones and if the fish smells. So those, I mean, I actually originally am from the east in India, which is Bengal. and we are credited to be people who only eat fish and rice.
Mm.
So I've been criticized, like, what sort of a Bengali are you? It's like, you don't even like fish. But I must tell you, in Japan, the freshness of the fish is just mind blowing. And I've never had an issue with the experiences I've been lucky to have there.
The way Japanese do everything is
Oh,
perfect. It's just they have a level of perfection that they bring to everything they execute, and
100%.
there's a nobleness in every profession which allows them to invest and dive so deeply into the craftsmanship of it. The movers over there, so I come from a moving background. The movers in Japan are the best in the world by far. I mean, if you ever want to just geek out on something, go
Yeah.
Google,
Really?
YouTube moving videos from Japan. I love Japanese. I think it's fantastic. Number 3.
I mean, if I can just add before
Oh,
you gave the moving experience, I mean, it is humbling because I had an opportunity to go to Tokyo twice in the last, like, I guess, 6 weeks. And they will walk you down to your car after you check out,
wow,
just sort of courtesy,
wow.
and customer service. I've never
Never,
experienced that in
never
any part
experienced.
of the world.
No,
So
never.
beautiful. Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. Let's keep it going here. Number 3, Burmese.
Burmese. Yes.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's Myanmar, ex-Burma. I think it is in the same genre of, I guess, Thai, but I think I'm a little partial to certain dishes that, Burmese do, a little differently, which I like.
Like, give me an
Then,
example of one.
so even Burmese is a mix of significantly Chinese influence and also Thai influence. But I would say there are a couple of things like the kauswe, their soup, their coconut soup, which is predominantly you could have vegetarian, but we have it with chicken. That's mind blowing. My mother-in-law actually made that, beautifully. Um, you don't get that many Burmese restaurants in most cities, but then we used to be very loyal to one in Philadelphia, my old previous city before I moved down to DC, and that restaurant unfortunately closed down. But some of their dishes, the soup, the Cowsways one, then they actually have a green mango salad. Like, how there
Really?
is certain things that cross over between the Thai genre and Burmese, but definitely partial to Burmese.
Love it, love it. All right, let's move on to number 2.
This was a toss up, and I can't imagine, I will get some comments from some family members of mine after the show. But between 1 and 2, it was a toss up. But Italian, I mean, we cook it at home. My older daughter is blind. I mean, you've tasted the food. I mean, she cooks like a chef. So we're definitely into the Italian cuisine.
I
I
had
love
a
a good bolognese.
duck bolognese.
Yes, duck ragu. Yeah.
Unreal.
And we cook our own Italian, and we've been privileged to visit Italy at least 10 times. Between the people, the love for the language, the love for the culture, and the food is to die for.
So
A good pizza, you can't go wrong with a
you
good
can't
pizza.
beat it. I mean, Italians could have conquered the world, if with good pizza. For me, Italian is kind of like comfort food for me. I actually made a chicken piccata over the weekend for my family, and that for me, that's comfort food. I always say I was raised Italian, being in New York. Everyone's Italian in New York. Let's get to your comfort food though. Number 1.
It's obviously something that I identify with. And, if you say, what is it? It's actually what most of you might not even be familiar with. It's not chicken tikka masala, the typical dishes that you know.
It's not
But
butter chicken?
it's not butter chicken. Not butter chicken at all. I would humbly say that the part of India I come from, and that actually crosses over to even Bangladesh because it's essentially the same country before the British divided us, has probably, and I don't think I'm just being biased, but has probably one of the best cuisines coming out of South Asia. So Bengali food, I would say Indian, but I would say more Bengali food.
So I became obsessed with Indian food in college because there was this Indian buffet near my house. And first of all, any buffet, I'm going to try 5 times. Okay, I'm going to give it a lot of chances. Okay, and this Indian buffet was fantastic, and I became obsessed with it because I had never tasted anything like it. Right, And I think once if you're a type of person that gets off put by tasting a flavor you've never tasted before because your brain thinks, oh, this must be bad because I've never had it before, Indian's not for you. But if you're a kind of person that becomes just like enchanted with it because it's something you've never had before, and I feel like I've tasted a lot of tastes before and I've never tasted that, I was absolutely mesmerized by it. I went back 3 times the first week probably, and I read an article on this, and I want to hear your thoughts. And it says if there's such a thing as a color wheel, and we've seen color wheels, right? And the primary colors are opposites, right? Whatever. And complementing colors, are opposite one another on the color wheel. And if we look at most cuisines will paint with the same color profile. Like French food, we have a mirepoix, right? You have carrots, onions, celery, butter, broth. It's all very like in the same kind of neighborhood. What Indian food that makes it special, from what I read in this article that I recall, is they take things on opposite ends of the flavor spectrum, on the flavor wheel, and they put them together. And that's what just blows your mind.
Someday you have to come back. I'll cook for you. Bengali food is very different than the typical butter chicken and chicken tikka. But the butter chicken and chicken tikka masala is predominantly from the north. But I would humbly say our cuisine is very different. And I mean, literally, our vegetables have minimal spices in them because you need to taste the vegetables. The meat is well spiced. I won't doubt that. But definitely, one of the crucial ways of cooking in Bengali cooking is the vegetables are steamed. It's there's not too much of oil. There's not overspiced. They're not overspiced, and you have to be. And each vegetable is cooked differently. The potato is cut differently.
How do you cut a potato differently?
You have to come here. I'll show
I
you.
will come.
So
I will come.
Depending on the preparation, the size of the potato is different per vegetable that it complements.
I love that. I also, another story you may not know is my senior year of college, when I had nowhere else to live, I was calling around looking for one room in a house. There was a 5-bedroom house. 4 guys were already in it. They said, come on down. I was a friend of a friend. I moved in. Two of the guys there were Bengali.
Oh,
And so,
that's funny.
yeah, and so we'd be playing. They'd be eating, with the hand, right? They'd be eating,
yeah, exactly.
Razib and Mohammed. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, that's hilarious. They might be from Bangladesh. I want to pick up on Richard's comment. Richard is right. I don't know whether it's Glasgow, Scotland, or the UK in general, but the interesting story about chicken tikka masala is actually created by some cooks or chefs out of the UK, of, I'm sure, Indian ethnicity or South Asian ethnicity, because a lot of the very good Indian restaurants are in London. Is probably the best place you'll get Indian food outside India, are Bangladeshi owned. But the interesting fact there is it was leftover chicken that under normal circumstances you might consider either throwing away or just, spice. It was then thrown into a tomato butter sauce and then cooked the second day. And that's how this thing evolved.
This thing. She won't even call it a dish. This
dish evolved.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Seriously. But I do want to say one thing that,
yes.
A lot of my American friends who love Indian food cannot handle Indian dessert. It's way too sweet and it's just mind blowing.
It's a lot of sugar, although I do love the rice pudding. I absolutely adore
you do?
Okay. Rice pudding.
Have you had rice pudding? I'm sure most of the rice puddings are made with sugar, white sugar. Have you ever had rice pudding with jaggery?
I don't think I have.
That's very traditional to the east where I come from. I'll cook that for you. It's a very creamy jaggery taste, like it's raw sugar.
Yeah, that would be good.
It's brown.
Sometimes
white.
Put some cardamom pods in there.
Yep.
I do think what is it, gulab?
Gulab jamun.
The balls. Those are too sweet for me. But I might take one of the balls and pop it in the middle of my rice pudding. But the mango pudding is a little custard is a little that's a little sweet for me.
It is.
The lassi is a little too much for me sometimes. But hey, you make it, I'll eat it. I promise you that. Okay.
I promise you have to come here. Yeah.
Ritu says, humbly, can I be the sous chef when you're feeding Ben?
You don't have to be the sous chef. You'll be a guest. My house is, you know where I live. You're always
I
welcome.
think it would be fun to cook it because I will tell you, I cook. I think I cook very well. I cook pretty much anything. I've never successfully made a good curry and a good Indian
We'll
curry.
work together. You can also do the grilling with your friend Nafis, but
Yes.
cooking as Indian stuff, we could work together.
Well, if I have to pick one, it's the curry. It's the curry in the kitchen, especially if it's August.
And yes, Ritu, you will be a part of this.
Anindita, you have been phenomenal. Tom Bruin said this is one of the best discussions I've heard around current immigration practices, including the input from other attendees. Thank you, Anindita and Ben. Tom, you have to come to our immigration symposium in August. It will be phenomenal. He says Thai, Mexican, Italian, Japanese, Indian, by the way. When I lived in Indianapolis in the mid-90s, his favorite restaurant was owned by an Indian couple. Interesting. I'm going to, we're over time already. I've got to go, but I want to give you just maybe a final thought, if you want to just share a final thought with us.
Absolutely. I think what everyone is very worried about is, at least I'm putting it in general terms, and then I will zoom down as far as the US is concerned, are the elections. We started off with this discussion. But I would like to reinforce and reassure each one of us that, given our responsibilities in this field, we should not be too worried. It's just that we should have conversations now of how to, rearrange our priorities, our means per company, and maybe whether it is some budget conversations that you must have, whether it's some flexible workforce strategies, alternative visas, cost benefit analysis of, how you could work together maybe with your law firm partner, whatever it is. This is what we are doing on a daily basis with our partners. So it's not all dark and dreary, no matter who is reelected. And we have to find creative alternatives given the responsibility that we bear on a daily basis in this area.
Love it. What a fantastic reminder. This has been Anindita Chowdhury, founder, principal, USILAW, the largest certified woman-owned business immigration firm in the U.S. Highly recommend you talk to them if you have any questions about immigration, visa services. Phenomenal people, great resource, quality of work is impeccable, second to none. Thank you, Anindita. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Ben, as always.